Commander Tae-min Park stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the stars through the main screen. His ship had been exploring this part of space for 3 months now, and they had found nothing but empty systems and dead rocks. The crew was getting restless and supplies were running low, but Tae-min knew they had to keep looking. Earth needed new worlds and new resources if humanity was going to survive in this big galaxy. Dr. So-young Kim walked up to him holding a data pad. She was the ship's chief scientist and one of the smartest people Tae-min had ever met. Her dark hair was tied back, and she looked tired from working long hours in the lab studying samples from the worlds they had visited. "Commander, we are picking up some strange signals from the next system," she said, pointing at her screen. "It looks like there might be something artificial there." Tae-min felt his heart beat faster. This could be it. This could be the first time humans met another intelligent species. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child, reading stories about space exploration. "Set course for the system," he ordered. "Send a message to Admiral Lee back on Earth. Tell him we might have found something important." The New Seoul moved through space toward the unknown system. As they got closer, the signals became stronger and clearer. Dr. Kim worked with her team to try to understand what they were hearing. The sounds were definitely not natural, and they seemed to follow patterns that suggested intelligence. "Commander," called out Lieutenant Hyun from the communication station, "I think these signals are some kind of language. The computer is trying to translate, but it needs more time." 3 days later, they entered the system and saw something amazing. There were ships everywhere, hundreds of them moving between the planets like a busy highway. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever built. They were long and curved with strange markings on their sides. "My God," whispered Dr. Kim. "We really are not alone." The alien ships seemed to notice the New Seoul immediately. Several of them changed course and began moving toward the human vessel. Tae-min felt nervous but also excited. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. "Open a channel," he said. "Let's try to talk to them." The main screen flickered, and then showed the face of something that was definitely not human. The creature had blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were larger than human eyes and completely black. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Dominion space without permission," the alien said. "You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Tae-min was surprised by the aggressive tone, but he tried to stay calm. Maybe this was just how these aliens normally talk to strangers. "This is Commander Park of the human vessel New Seoul," he replied. "We come in peace and seek friendship with your people. We had no knowledge that this was your space." The alien leader made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not friendly. Other alien faces appeared on the screen, and they were all looking at the humans with what seemed like amusement. "Humans," the leader said. "Another primitive species that thinks it can negotiate with its betters. I am War Leader Chiron of the Galactic Dominion. Your species will surrender and accept placement in our hierarchy, or you will be destroyed." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "What hierarchy?" she asked. "We don't understand what you mean." "The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, Chiron explained with obvious pride. "Every intelligent species is ranked by their strength and technology. Strong species rule over weak species. This is the natural order. And where would humans rank in this hierarchy?" Tae-min asked, though he was beginning to suspect he did not want to know the answer. "Your ships are primitive and few in number," Chiron said, looking at readings on his own screen. "Your weapons are basic chemical rockets and simple energy beams. You would rank very low. Perhaps above the plant creatures of Sector 7, but certainly below the insect minds of the hive worlds." The alien leader leaned forward, and his black eyes seemed to stare right through the screen at Tae-min. "You have one choice, human. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve the Dominion. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the galaxy fears our power." Taemin looked around his bridge at his crew. These were good people who had volunteered to explore the unknown for the benefit of all humanity. They did not deserve to be threatened by arrogant aliens who saw them as nothing more than potential slaves. "We cannot make that decision for our entire species," he said carefully. "We would need to return to our home world and discuss this with our leaders." "No," Chiron said sharply. "You will decide now. Submit or be destroyed." The alien cut the communication, and his ships began to move into attack formation around the new Sol. Taemin realized with growing horror that these aliens had no interest in peaceful contact. They saw humans as just another species to be conquered and enslaved. "All hands prepare for combat," he announced over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill." The crew moved quickly to their battle stations, but Taemin knew they had little chance against so many alien ships. The new Sol was an exploration vessel, not a warship. It had some defensive weapons, but nothing that could fight off an entire alien fleet. The first alien ship fired without warning. The energy beam struck the new Sol's shields, and the whole ship shook from the impact. Emergency lights began flashing as power systems struggled to maintain protection. "Return fire," Taemin ordered, but even as he said it, he knew it was useless. New Sol's weapons struck one of the alien ships but barely damaged its hull. The aliens had much stronger shields and armor than anything humans had built. More alien ships opened fire, and the human vessel's shields began to fail. "Commander," shouted Dr. Kim over the noise of alarms and explosions, "I'm detecting 2 human research stations in this system. The aliens are attacking them too." On the screen, they could see the distant flashes of weapons fire as the alien fleet destroyed the small human outposts. Thousands of scientists and their families lived on those stations. They had no weapons and no way to defend themselves. "Those are civilians," Taemin said in shock. "Scientists and researchers. They pose no threat to anyone." He opened a channel to the alien fleet. "Stop your attack on our research stations. Those people are non-combatants." Chiron's face appeared on screen again. This time he was smiling and showing teeth that were sharp, like a predator's. "They are humans and therefore enemies of the Dominion. Their deaths will serve as an example to your species of what happens to those who resist us." The alien leader cut the channel again and continued his attack. Within minutes, both research stations were destroyed. 50,000 human lives ended in explosions that lit up the darkness of space. The new Sol was badly damaged, but still fighting when Taemin made a desperate decision. "All power to engines!" he shouted. "We're getting out of here!" The ship turned and ran from the alien fleet. Some of the alien ships followed, but they seemed content to let the humans escape. They had made their point. They had shown their power and their willingness to kill without mercy. As the new Sol limped toward human space, Dr. Kim worked frantically to record everything they had learned about the aliens. Their technology, their weapons, their attitude toward other species. All of it would be vital information for Earth's leaders. "Commander," she said quietly as they reached the edge of the system, "what are we going to tell Admiral Lee?" Taemin looked at the stars ahead, knowing that somewhere among them was Earth and billions of humans who had no idea what was coming for them. These aliens saw humanity as nothing more than another weak species to be conquered. They had killed 50,000 people as casually as someone might step on an insect. "We're going to tell him the truth," he said. "We're going to tell him that we found intelligent life in the galaxy and it wants to destroy us." The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, the crew of the new Sol worked to repair their ship and analyze the data they had collected. The alien technology was definitely more advanced than human technology, but Dr. Kim noticed something interesting in the weapon patterns and ship designs. "These aliens are used to fighting enemies who surrender quickly," she told Taemin. "Their tactics assume that a show of overwhelming force will end any conflict before it really begins. "What makes you think that?" he asked. "Look at their ship formations and weapon deployment," she explained. "Everything is designed for intimidation and quick, decisive victory. These are not the tactics of a species that has fought long, difficult wars. When they finally reached Earth, Taemin immediately reported to Admiral Woo Jin Lee at Space Command headquarters. The admiral was an old soldier who had spent his entire career preparing for the possibility that humanity might one day encounter hostile aliens. So they gave us an ultimatum, Lee said after hearing the full report. "Submit or be destroyed." "Yes, sir," Taemin replied. "They see us as primitives who should be grateful for the chance to serve them." Admiral Lee was quiet for a long time, looking at the data from the alien encounter. Finally, he stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the sprawling military complex below. "Commander Park," he said slowly, "these aliens have made a serious mistake, sir," Taemin asked, confused by the admiral's calm tone. Lee turned around, and there was something in his eyes that Taemin had never seen before. It was not fear or worry. War Leader Chiron sat in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Dominance, feeling very pleased with himself. The encounter with the primitive humans had gone exactly as expected. A few shots fired, a few threats made, and another species had learned their place in the galaxy. Soon, human representatives would arrive begging for mercy and offering their surrender. His communication officer interrupted his thoughts. "War Leader, we are receiving a transmission from the human home world." "Excellent," Chiron said. "Put it on the main screen. Let us see how quickly these humans have learned wisdom." The screen lit up, showing a human female in formal diplomatic clothing. She had short black hair and spoke in a calm, professional voice that surprised Chiron. Most species were terrified and begging by this point. "I am Ambassador So-Young Kim representing the United Government of Earth," she said. "We have received your ultimatum regarding the surrender and subjugation of humanity." "Good," Chiron said. "Have you come to discuss the terms of your surrender?" The human woman looked directly at him through the screen, and her next words made every alien on the bridge stop what they were doing. "Humanity formally rejects your ultimatum," she said. "Furthermore, we accept your declaration of war against our species. Prepare yourselves accordingly." Chiron stared at the screen in disbelief. No species had ever rejected the Dominion's offer of peaceful subjugation. Every intelligent race they had encountered understood that resistance was pointless against the might of their empire. "You cannot be serious," he said. "Your ships are few and primitive. Your weapons are basic chemical rockets. You have one world while we control thousands." Ambassador Kim smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "War Leader Chiron, you have made several incorrect assumptions about humanity. We suggest you reconsider your position while you still can." "Are you threatening us?" Chiron asked, beginning to feel angry. "Do you have any idea who you are speaking to?" "We know exactly who we are speaking to," the human replied. "A representative of a species that has grown accustomed to easy victories against peaceful races. Unfortunately for you, humans are neither peaceful nor easy to defeat." The transmission ended, and Chiron found himself staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers looked confused and uncertain. This had never happened before in 3,000 years of Dominion expansion. On Earth, Admiral Lee stood in the war room deep beneath the surface of the planet. Around him, dozens of human military leaders were studying star charts and troop movements. These were not the politicians and diplomats who normally handled first-contact situations. These were soldiers and strategists who had spent their entire careers preparing for exactly this scenario. General Hyun-Woo Choi approached the admiral carrying a thick folder of documents. He was Earth's foremost military historian and had spent decades studying every war ever fought by humanity. From ancient battles with swords and spears to modern conflicts with nuclear weapons, he understood how humans waged war better than anyone alive. "Admiral, the preliminary analysis is complete," he said. "Based on the data from Commander Park's encounter, we have identified several weaknesses in Dominion military doctrine." "Tell me," Lee said without looking up from the strategic display. "Their tactics are designed for intimidation and quick, decisive victory," Choi explained. They have been fighting the same way for 3,000 years because it has always worked. Species see their overwhelming numbers and advanced technology and surrender without a real fight. And that's a weakness because, Lee prompted. Because they have never faced an enemy that refuses to surrender, the general replied. They have no experience with prolonged conflict or determined resistance. More importantly, they have never fought an enemy that actively wants to destroy them, rather than simply defend territory. Lee finally looked up from the display. What do you mean? Choi opened his folder and pulled out historical documents from Human Conflicts. Admiral, every other species they have conquered developed in peaceful environments. They fight to defend their homes or to gain resources, but they don't fight to completely eliminate their enemies. But humans do, Lee said, beginning to understand. Humans are the only species in this galaxy that evolved through constant warfare, the general confirmed. We didn't just learn to fight for survival. We learned to fight for total victory. When humans go to war, we don't stop until our enemies cannot fight back. In another part of the complex, engineer Aram Yoon was working with her team to prepare humanity's response to the alien threat. She was responsible for weapons development and had been working on secret projects that even most government leaders didn't know about. Show me what we have, Admiral Lee said when he visited her laboratory. Yoon led him through corridors lined with experimental weapons and defensive systems. We've been preparing for this possibility since we first reached the stars, she explained. Every human military leader understood that we might encounter hostile aliens someday. They stopped in front of a massive viewing window that looked down into a construction bay. Inside, workers were putting the finishing touches on sleek black ships that looked nothing like the exploration vessels that other species had seen. The aliens think our ships are primitive because they've only seen our exploration fleet, Yoon said. They have no idea about our military vessels. Lee studied the ships below. They were smaller than the alien vessels, but they looked fast and deadly. What makes them special? Everything, Yoon replied with obvious pride. These ships are designed with one purpose in mind, to kill enemy vessels as efficiently as possible. No wasted space on luxury quarters or diplomatic facilities. Every system is optimized for combat. She led him to another section where technicians were loading strange-looking missiles into launch tubes. Our weapons are designed with a different philosophy than alien weapons, she explained. They build weapons to disable and capture. We build weapons to destroy completely. The aliens mentioned that our weapons were simple chemical rockets, Lee said. Yoon laughed. Those were our exploration ship's defensive systems. These are antimatter warheads, guided by quantum targeting systems. One of these missiles can crack a planet's crust. Captain Subin Kang was in the pilot training facility, running combat simulations with her squadron. She was one of humanity's best pilots and had been chosen to lead the first wave of attacks against the alien fleet. Her ships were not just weapons platforms, but extensions of the human pilots who flew them. Remember what we learned from Commander Park's encounter? She told her pilots during the briefing. The aliens rely on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. They expect enemies to break formation and retreat when faced with superior numbers. Her squadron was made up of volunteers who had trained for years in secret. They knew this day might come, and they were ready for it. Unlike the aliens who had grown soft from centuries of easy victories, these humans had trained constantly for the possibility of real war. "What's our mission, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Min-ho, who was Subin's wingman. "Simple," she replied. "We're going to show them what human military doctrine really looks like." 3 days after Ambassador Kim's rejection of their ultimatum, Chiron assembled what he considered an appropriate response. 500 Dominion warships, the largest punishment, fleet ever assembled. It was enough firepower to sterilize several worlds, and it should be more than sufficient to teach these arrogant humans their place. "This will be a demonstration," he announced to his fleet commanders. "We will destroy their defensive installations and military vessels, but leave their population centers intact. They need to survive to serve the Dominion, but they must understand the price of defiance." The Dominion fleet moved through space toward human territory, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had never lost a battle in 3,000 years, and they saw no reason why this would be any different. What they didn't know was that humanity had been tracking their movements since they left Dominion space. human listening posts, hidden. Throughout the region had been monitoring alien communications and troop movements. The humans knew exactly when and where the attack would come. Captain Kang received her orders as the alien fleet approached the human system. "All pilots to your ships," she announced over the intercom. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of." The human fleet that met the Dominion ships was much smaller than expected. Only 50 vessels compared to the aliens' 500. Chiron felt almost disappointed. He had expected more of a challenge from a species arrogant enough to reject the Dominion's generous offer. "Open fire when ready," he commanded. "Disable their ships quickly and prepare boarding parties." The Dominion fleet opened fire with the same tactics they had used for centuries. Overwhelming displays of firepower designed to break enemy morale and force quick surrender. But something was wrong. The human ships didn't break formation or attempt to retreat. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the alien fleet. Captain Kang led her squadron in a diving attack that took the aliens completely by surprise. Human ships moved with a speed and aggressiveness that the Dominion had never encountered. They didn't try to match the aliens' heavy firepower. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics that struck at weak points in alien formations. Emperor Velthar of the Galactic Dominion stood in his throne room on the capital world of Dominus Prime, staring at reports that made no sense. His punishment fleet of 500 ships had been completely destroyed by 50 human vessels. In 3,000 years of Dominion expansion, nothing like this had ever happened. "Bring me the military council," he commanded his servants. "I want to understand how this is possible." Within hours, the greatest military minds of the Dominion had assembled before their emperor. These were beings from 12 different species, all united under the banner of galactic conquest. They had conquered thousands of worlds and subjugated hundreds of species. They were supposed to be the ultimate authority on warfare in the galaxy. "Explain to me how 50 primitive ships destroyed 500 of our finest vessels," the Emperor demanded. High Commander Zektul of the warrior caste stepped forward. He was a massive creature with 6 arms and natural armor plating that made him look like a living weapon. "Emperor, the humans did not fight according to established galactic warfare protocols." "What does that mean?" Velthar asked. "When civilized species wage war, there are understood rules," the commander explained. "Battles are fought for territory, resources, or political advantage. Victory is achieved when the enemy surrenders or retreats. The goal is to minimize losses, while achieving objectives. And the humans ignored all of these conventions," Zektul said with something that might have been respect in his voice. "They attacked with the sole purpose of killing as many of our warriors as possible. They showed no interest in capturing territory or taking prisoners. Their only goal was the complete destruction of our fleet. On Earth, tactician Jae-Sung Lim was putting the finishing touches on humanity's next phase of operations. He specialized in psychological warfare and understood that winning battles was only part of defeating an enemy. The real victory came from breaking their will to fight." "Admiral," he said as he entered Lee's office, "the Dominion is mobilizing 3 full war fleets, 15,000 ships carrying 50 million soldiers." "Good," Lee replied. "The bigger they are, the harder they fall." Lim spread out his plans on the Admiral's desk. "Sir, I recommend we let them come. In fact, I think we should encourage them to bring even more ships." Lee looked at the tactician with surprise. "You want them to bring more forces against us?" "Admiral, the Dominion has ruled through fear for 3,000 years, Lim explained. "Every species in their empire believes that resistance is hopeless because the Dominion always wins. But what happens when that changes?" "They lose their grip on power," Lee said, beginning to understand. "Exactly," Lim continued. "But for that to work, the defeat has to be so complete and so public that every species in the galaxy knows about it. We need to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness." Commander Yunhai Han was preparing her special operations teams for missions that no other species would have imagined possible. She was humanity's expert in unconventional warfare, and her job was to take the fight directly to the enemy's home worlds. "Remember our objective," she told her teams during the final briefing. "We're not there to conquer territory or capture resources. We're there to send a message." Her soldiers were the best that humanity had to offer. They had trained for years in secret, preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. Now that it was here, they were ready to show the galaxy what human special forces could accomplish. "What kind of message, Commander?" asked Sergeant Bo-Ram, one of her team leaders. "We're going to show every species in the Dominion exactly how easily we can reach them," Han replied. "No world is safe, no defense is strong enough, and no distance is too far for human forces to travel." Intelligence officer Dong-Yun Seo had been monitoring Dominion communications since the first battle, and what he discovered would change everything. The aliens had been careless with their transmissions, assuming that no primitive species could break their encryption codes. "Admiral," he reported to Lee, "we've been intercepting and decoding Dominion messages for months. We know the location of every military base, every supply depot, and every government facility in their empire." "How is that possible?" Lee asked. "They use the same communication protocols they've used for centuries," Seo explained. "They never changed them because they never had to. No species was advanced enough to break their codes, and they never imagined anyone would try. More importantly, Seo had learned about the psychology and weaknesses of every species in the Dominion Empire. The plant-like Verdani were terrified of fire. The crystalline shardlings feared sonic weapons. The aquatic deep swimmers couldn't survive without their water-filled environments. "Admiral, we can tailor our psychological warfare to each species specifically," he said. "We know exactly what scares them, and how to use those fears against them." The Dominion war fleets began moving toward human space, confident that their overwhelming numbers would crush any resistance. Emperor Velthar himself traveled with the fleet aboard his personal dreadnought, the Galaxy's Fist. He wanted to personally witness the destruction of this troublesome species, but the humans were ready for them. Commander Han's special operations teams had already infiltrated dozens of Dominion worlds. They didn't attack military targets or government facilities. Instead, they did something far more terrifying. On the Verdani home world, a team of human soldiers appeared in the middle of the capital city's main plaza. They didn't fire weapons or threaten civilians. Instead, they simply set up a broadcasting station and began transmitting messages to the entire planet. "People of Verdan, the human," Commander announced. "Your military leaders have told you that the Dominion is invincible. We are here to show you the truth." The broadcast showed footage from the battle where 50 human ships had destroyed 500 Dominion vessels. The Verdani population watched in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible military was obliterated by an enemy they had never heard of. "The Dominion has lied to you for centuries," the human continued. "They are not invincible. They are not your protectors. They are parasites who grow fat on your labor while sending your children to die in their wars of conquest." Similar broadcasts were happening simultaneously on dozens of worlds throughout the Dominion. Human special forces appeared without warning, delivered their messages, and vanished before any military response could be organized. The psychological impact was devastating. For the first time in 3,000 years, the subject species of the Dominion began to question their rulers' strength. Riots broke out on several worlds as populations demanded answers from their Dominion governors. Captain Kang was leading the human fleet that would meet the Dominion war fleets. She had been promoted after her victory in the first battle and now commanded a force of 200 human vessels. It was still vastly outnumbered by the 15,000 Dominion ships approaching, but she was confident in her mission. "All ships prepare for Operation Thunderbolt," she announced over the fleet. "Communications. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting to free every enslaved species in this galaxy." The human battle plan was unlike anything the Dominion had ever faced. Instead of meeting their fleets in open battle, the humans had prepared a trap that would use the aliens' own numbers against them. Tactician Lim had chosen the battlefield carefully. The Nexus system contained a series of asteroid fields and electromagnetic anomalies that would disrupt Dominion sensors and communications. More importantly, it was exactly where the aliens expected to find the main human fleet. When the Dominion war fleets arrived, they found the humans waiting for them just as expected. What they didn't expect was the nature of the battle that followed. The human ships immediately scattered in all directions using the asteroid fields for cover. The Dominion fleet tried to pursue but found themselves spread out across the entire system, unable to use their numerical advantage effectively. "What are they doing?" Emperor Velthar demanded from his command ship. Why won't they stand and fight? His military advisors had no answer. The humans were using tactics that made no sense according to traditional galactic warfare. They struck without warning at isolated Dominion squadrons, then vanished back into the asteroid fields before reinforcements could arrive. Each human attack was precisely targeted and devastatingly effective. They didn't try to capture ships or take prisoners. They simply destroyed their targets as completely as possible, then moved on to the next victim. Captain Kang's voice echoed across human communication channels as she coordinated the attacks. Phoenix Squadron target the command ship of Group 7. Falcon Squadron hit the supply convoy in Sector 12. Remember, total destruction is the only acceptable outcome. The Dominion fleet found itself being picked apart piece by piece. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't bring their firepower to bear on an enemy that refused to engage in traditional battle formations. Worse, the humans seemed to know exactly where every Dominion ship was at all times. Their attacks were perfectly timed and coordinated, suggesting intelligence-gathering capabilities that the aliens had never suspected. Emperor, one of his communications officers, reported with obvious fear. We're receiving surrender offers from several of our own worlds. What? Velthar shouted. That's impossible. Emperor Velthar stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Dominion for what he suspected might be the last time. Representatives from 12 species filled the vast chamber, each one showing signs of the fear and uncertainty that had gripped the Empire since the human victories began. The situation is grave, he announced to the assembled leaders. These humans have destroyed nearly half of our military forces, and their rebellion broadcasts have caused uprisings on over 200 worlds. High Commander Zektul stepped forward. The massive warrior looked older somehow, as if the recent defeats had aged him beyond his years. Emperor, we have recalled every ship, every soldier from across the Empire. What remains of our forces are being concentrated at Dominus Prime for a final defensive stand. Defensive, Velthar said the word, like it tasted bitter. For 3,000 years, the Dominion has never fought defensively. We have always been the attackers, the conquerors. That was before we encountered an enemy that fights to kill, rather than to conquer, Zektul replied. These humans do not follow any recognizable pattern of warfare. They seem determined to destroy us completely. On the human flagship Earth's Will, Admiral Mi-Kyung-bae studied the tactical displays showing Dominion troop movements. She commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled, 300 ships that represented the core of Earth's military might. But numbers were not what made her fleet dangerous. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported, all Dominion forces are withdrawing to their core systems. It looks like they're abandoning their outer territories, Bae nodded. She had expected this. The Dominion was finally learning to fear humanity, and that fear was causing them to make tactical mistakes. By concentrating their forces, they were giving up their greatest advantage, which was the size of their empire. Send word to Commander Han's Special Operations teams, she ordered. It's time for the next phase. Dr. Junho Shin was working in the most secret laboratory in human space, putting the finishing touches on a weapon that would change the nature of warfare forever. He was Earth's foremost expert on stellar engineering, and he had spent years developing technology that could affect stars themselves. Admiral Lee, he said over the secure communication link, the stellar destabilizer is ready for deployment. Lee was quiet for a long moment. They had discussed this weapon many times, and both men understood its implications. It was not just a tool of war, but a demonstration of power that would terrify every species in the galaxy. Are you certain it will work as designed? Lee asked. Yes, sir, Shin replied. We can trigger a controlled supernova in any star system we choose. The process is irreversible once started and will destroy everything within 10 light years, and the demonstration targets 3 uninhabited Dominion systems on the border of their territory, Shin said. Far enough from populated worlds to avoid civilian casualties, but close enough to make the point. Emperor Velthar was meeting with his remaining military commanders when the reports began coming in. The first transmission was from a border patrol ship that had been monitoring the edge of Dominion space. Emperor, the ship's captain said, his voice filled with disbelief. The Kethral system star just went supernova. The entire system has been destroyed. That's impossible, Velthar replied. Kethral was a stable star with billions of years left in its cycle. Before the captain could respond, another transmission arrived from a different sector. Your Majesty, the Vordak system star has also gone supernova. We're detecting massive gravitational disturbances throughout the region. Then came the third report. Another star, another system destroyed in a flash of unimaginable energy. 3. Star systems eliminated in the span of 6 hours. Sir, his chief scientist said with obvious terror. There's only one explanation. Someone has technology that can destabilize stars artificially. The implications hit Velthar like a physical blow. The humans didn't just have superior military tactics and weapons. They had the power to destroy entire solar systems. They could eliminate the Dominion not by conquering it, but by making it uninhabitable. The human broadcast came 12 hours, later transmitted simultaneously to every inhabited world in Dominion space. The speaker was Admiral Lee himself, and his message was simple and terrifying. People of the Galactic Dominion, he said in a calm, professional voice, we have just demonstrated humanity's stellar destabilization technology. 3 of your border systems have been eliminated to show you the power we possess. The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. This is not a threat. This is a fact. We can destroy any star system in your empire whenever we choose. However, we prefer not to use such weapons against populated worlds. Velthar felt something he had never experienced before in his long life. True helpless terror. These humans could literally extinguish the suns that warmed Dominion worlds. They could turn the Empire's greatest treasures into expanding clouds of radioactive gas. The Galactic Dominion will immediately cease all military operations against humanity and its allies. Lee continued. All Dominion forces will withdraw to a radius of 50 light-years from human space. Any ship that enters our territory will be destroyed without warning. Furthermore, the Admiral said, and now his voice carried a hardness that made Velthar's blood run cold. The Dominion will begin immediate reparations for the civilians killed in your unprovoked attack on our research stations. You will also cooperate with human administrators in the dismantling of your Empire's slave systems. The transmission ended, leaving the Dominion leadership in stunned silence. They had gone from conquerors to conquered without ever seeing it coming. High Commander Zek Tool was the first to speak. Emperor, if these humans can destroy stars, then resistance is pointless. We must surrender. No, Velthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. The Dominion does not surrender to primitives. With respect, Your Majesty, another commander interjected. These are not primitives. They have technology that we cannot even comprehend. They fight with a ruthlessness that we have never encountered. And now they have shown they can destroy worlds without even sending ships to attack them. Reports began flooding in from throughout the Empire. Dominion governors on dozens of worlds were surrendering to human forces rather than risk having their stars extinguished. The tributary species that had served the Empire for centuries were declaring independence and requesting human protection. Captain Kang led a human fleet toward the Dominion core worlds, but she was not expecting to fight a battle. Her mission was to accept surrenders and ensure the peaceful transition of power to local governments. Captain, her communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 different worlds in this sector alone. Their governors want guarantees that their stars won't be destroyed. Kang nodded. The stellar destabilizer demonstration had achieved exactly what human strategists had hoped. The Dominion was collapsing not from military defeat, but from pure terror. Accept all legitimate surrender offers, she ordered. But make it clear that cooperation is required. Any world that attempts to harbor Dominion war criminals or military assets will face consequences. On Dominus Prime, Emperor Velthar found himself ruling an empire that existed mostly in name only. His military had surrendered, his governors had abandoned their posts, and his tributary species were openly rebelling against Dominion authority. Your Majesty, his chief advisor said quietly, perhaps it is time to consider personal surrender. The humans have made it clear that they distinguish between political leaders and war criminals. Velthar looked around his throne room at the symbols of 3 millennia of galactic dominance. Statues of conquered species, trophies from 1,000. Victories, banners representing the submission of entire civilizations, all of it meaningless now. How did this happen? He asked. How did we go from masters of the galaxy to defeated refugees in less than a year? We underestimated them, his advisor replied. We assumed they were like every other species we had encountered. Peaceful, civilized, willing to accept subordination, rather than face destruction. But they were different. Yes, Your Majesty. They evolved through constant warfare. They understand conflict in ways that we never could. And most importantly, they were willing to fight total war while we were still thinking in terms of limited engagements. Admiral Bay's fleet arrived at Dominus Prime to find no resistance waiting for them. The planet's orbital defenses had been powered down, and Dominion ships were fleeing toward the edge of the system. The once mighty capital of the galaxy's greatest empire was surrendering without firing a shot. Admiral, her tactical officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the planetary surface. Emperor Velthar wants to discuss terms of surrender. Bay considered the irony. Less than a year ago, this same emperor had demanded humanity's immediate submission. Now he was begging for mercy from the species he had dismissed as primitives. Put him on screen, she ordered. Velthar appeared looking older and more tired than in previous communications. His throne room, which had once seemed magnificent, now looked shabby and desperate. Admiral Bay, he said, I wish to discuss the terms of the Dominion's surrender. There are no terms to discuss, Bay replied. The Dominion will disarm completely. All military vessels will be turned over to human forces or destroyed. President Namsu Park stood at the podium in the newly constructed Galactic Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Haven Prime. Representatives from over 300 species filled the vast chamber, all of them waiting to hear how humanity intended to rule the galaxy they had conquered. 6 months had passed since the fall of the Dominion, and the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. Former slave worlds were establishing their own governments. Refugee populations were returning to their home planets, and everywhere the question was the same. What did the humans want? Fellow sapients. President Park began his voice carrying to every corner of the assembly hall. 6 months ago, humanity was drawn into a war we did not seek against an empire we had never heard of. Today, that empire is gone, and we find ourselves in a position we never wanted. The assembled representatives listened in tense silence. Many of them had lived their entire lives under Dominion rule, and they expected their new human overlords to be just as oppressive. I stand before you today to make a promise, Park continued. Humanity did not fight this war to build an empire. We fought to prevent our own destruction and to free the enslaved peoples of this galaxy. Now that the war is over, we have no intention of becoming the new oppressors. A murmur ran through the assembly. This was not what most of the representatives had expected to hear. However, the president said, and his tone became more serious, we also will not allow the chaos and warfare that led to the Dominion's rise to return. Humanity will serve as the guarantor of galactic peace, and we will enforce that peace with whatever force is necessary. Ambassador Young-hee Cho was working behind the scenes to establish the framework of what would become known as the human peace. She had spent months traveling to former Dominion worlds, helping newly independent governments understand their rights and responsibilities under the new order. The principle is simple, she explained to a gathering of planetary governors. Each world has the right to govern itself according to its own customs and values. But no world has the right to attack, conquer, or enslave another world. And if conflicts arise between worlds, asked the governor of Kelthera, a former Dominion mining colony, then you bring the dispute to the Galactic Assembly for mediation, Cho replied. If peaceful resolution is not possible, then human forces will intervene to prevent warfare. What gives humans the right to make these decisions for the entire galaxy? Demanded the representative from Zerion, whose people had been among the Dominion's most loyal servants. Ambassador Cho's expression hardened. The same thing that gave the Dominion the right to enslave your people for 1,000 years. Superior military force. The difference is that we choose to use that force to prevent oppression, rather than to enforce it. Dr. Junho Shin had been tasked with one of the most difficult jobs in the new galactic order. As head of the Human Weapons Monitoring Division, he was responsible for ensuring that no species could ever again threaten galactic peace through superior military technology. Every world is allowed defensive weapons sufficient to protect against pirates and raiders, he explained to a committee of alien scientists. But any attempt to develop weapons of mass destruction or stellar manipulation technology will result in immediate human intervention. How will you know if we are developing Such weapons? Asked a crystalline researcher. Shin smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. We will know. Human monitoring stations are being established throughout the galaxy, and our intelligence networks are more extensive than the Dominion ever dreamed possible. The truth was that humanity had used captured Dominion technology to create a surveillance network that could monitor every major industrial facility in the galaxy. No species could develop advanced weapons without human knowledge. Philosopher Seung-Min Kwok struggled with the moral implications of humanity's new role as galactic police. He had been appointed to chair the ethics committee that would oversee human actions in the post-war galaxy. We have become the thing we once feared, he wrote in his private journal. A species with the power to destroy worlds at will. The question that haunts me is whether any species can possess such power without being corrupted by it. Kwok's committee was responsible for ensuring that human forces only intervened when absolutely necessary, and that such interventions were proportional to the threat. It was a thankless job that required him to second-guess military commanders who had just saved the galaxy from tyranny. Professor, his assistant said as she brought him the morning reports. There's been another incident in the Outer Rim, a dispute between the Aquatic Alliance and the Desert Federation over water rights. Kwok sighed. These were the kinds of conflicts that the new galactic order was supposed to prevent. What's our recommendation? Economic sanctions against both sides. Until they agree to mediation, she replied. Captain Kang's fleet is standing by in case military intervention becomes necessary. The threat of human military action was usually enough to bring disputing parties to the negotiating table. No one wanted to face the species that had destroyed the mighty Dominion in less than a year. Former Emperor Velthar sat in his cell on the prison world of justice, waiting for his trial to begin. He had been the most powerful being in the galaxy for over 2 centuries, but now he was just another war criminal awaiting judgment. His guard was a young human soldier who treated him with professional courtesy, but no respect. This more than anything else demonstrated how completely the old order had collapsed. Tell me, soldier, Velthar said during one of their conversations. Do you think your people will be any better rulers than the Dominion was? The guard considered the question. Seriously? We're not trying to be rulers, he finally replied. We're trying to be peacekeepers. There's a difference, is there? Velthar asked. Power corrupts regardless of the intentions of those who wield it, maybe, the guard said. But at least we're trying to use our power to help people instead of enslaving them. Captain Subin Kang was patrolling the former Dominion Core worlds when she received an emergency transmission. A new species had made contact with the galactic community, and they were proving to be aggressive and hostile to their neighbors, Captain, her communications officer reported. The Nexarian Republic has attacked 3 different worlds in the past week. They're demanding tribute and threatening to destroy any planet that refuses to submit. Kang felt a familiar mixture of excitement and dread. This was exactly the kind of situation that the human peace was designed to prevent, but it would require a demonstration of force that might be seen as oppressive by some. Set course for Nexarian space, she ordered. Send a message to their government informing them that they have 24 hours to withdraw from all occupied territories and cease all aggressive actions. And if they refuse, her tactical officer asked. Then we show them why the Dominion fell so quickly, Kang replied. The Nexarians were a proud warrior species that had only recently achieved space travel. They had missed the entire Dominion period and had no idea what had happened to the galaxy's former rulers. When they received the human ultimatum, they responded with contempt and defiance. We are the Nexarian Empire, their leader declared in a broadcast to Captain Kang's fleet. We bow to no one, and we fear no enemy. Your pathetic handful of ships cannot threaten our mighty armada. Kang looked at the tactical display showing 200 Nexarian warships facing her fleet of 20 human vessels. The odds would have been considered impossible by any reasonable military analyst. All ships prepare for combat, she announced. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're defending the peace that millions of beings died to achieve. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, the Nexarian Empire had ceased to exist as a military power. Their surviving ships fled toward their homeworld, carrying news of their defeat to a population that could not believe what had happened. The human victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Every species that might have been considering aggressive expansion suddenly reconsidered their plans. The message was clear. Any attempt to restart the cycle of conquest and oppression would be met with overwhelming force. Ambassador Cho arrived at the Nexarian homeworld 3 days later, not as a conqueror but as a diplomat. Her mission was to help the Nexarians understand their place in the new galactic order and to ensure they never again threatened their neighbors. "Your people fought bravely," she told the Nexarian leadership. "But you also discovered why aggressive warfare is no longer possible in this galaxy. What do you want from us?" the Nexarian premier asked, expecting demands for tribute or territory. "We want you to learn to resolve conflicts peacefully," Cho replied. "Your people will be allowed to govern themselves and pursue their own destiny. But that destiny cannot include the conquest or oppression of other species," President Park received reports of the Nexarian incident with mixed feelings. The swift human victory had reinforced the galaxy's understanding that the human peace was not negotiable, but it had also reminded everyone that humanity possessed the power to destroy entire civilizations. "Mr. President," his chief advisor said, "the galactic community is requesting that we formalize our peacekeeping role. They want a permanent human military presence and a clear set of laws governing interstellar relations." Park nodded.